Hello everybody and welcome to today's look at stock control options in Koha. My name is Sam Goldsmith and I am Business Development Manager here at Open Fifth. So today I'm going to try and cover a handful of different ways in which Koha can help you organise and look after your stock. I will not cover a lot of the batch processes as these were very ably covered by Fiona's recent webinar, and there's links attached here and there will be other links at the end. I'm going to lightly touch upon reports in the ways that they intersect to stock movement and management, but we will leave lots of that detail to past and future reporting specific webinars. But if you do want to refresh your mind on any of these other topics, please do have a look at our YouTube. And as I said, I'm going to post the links at the end too. So today, what we're going to try and look at is the inventory, otherwise known as stock checking, the processes that are useful when you are weeding, the rotation processes that are available in Koha, the stock management that feeds into acquisitions, and a little bit about the preservation module. So first of all, let's look at stock checking. This process is found in the cataloging module and is called inventory. To use this, you need either to be a super librarian in status or use the setting that is shown on the slide, which has to be ticked in your user permissions. So this tool compares barcodes that are gathered by whatever means to the expected shelf list. And this is done by classification or call number, so that the system has an expectation of not only what stock should be there in terms of your offerings, but its appropriate order on each of the shelves too. So there are various modes of working according to your own setup. For very small services that may not have a barcode scanner or use alternative codes, you can have the option to generate a shelf list, which is based on criteria you enter, and then you can print it out and walk physically around the library, checking against your collection, and then manually modify the Koha records later. You can gather the items to a trolley to bring to a fixed library PC, or using a mobile scanner or a laptop and scanner, you can move around the stock and scan the barcodes directly into the inventory box as you come across them. You can also elect to scan into a file and once finished, upload the text file generated by the scanner to Koha. When we start an inventory check, we set criteria so that the system knows which part of the stock we are going to be working with. So I'm going to just exit my slides and go to the Koha interface. So this, as I mentioned, is in cataloging. So we're going to go to cataloging and we're going to find inventory here. So what we have to do is we have to set parameters for this stock check. And this is the first thing we have to choose is the date we want to mark as the start of the stock check. And this is kind of the last time the items were seen date to mark against. So this is usually the day of the scanning itself or the start of the stock check if it's a more major one. And this can also be the previous year's stock check. And then we want to compare the barcodes list to results. So we always tick this method. So the next one's a bit unusual. It's do not check items in when they're scanned. So it's assuming, so the default is it's assuming that because you've scanned something on the shelf that was otherwise marked as on loan, that you would immediately want it to check that item in because it's not loaned out. But if you really don't want to do that, you can tick it so that it doesn't do it. But I can imagine that most times you would want to. And finally, we have the check barcodes list for items shelved out of order. So when this is ticked, Koha will compare the call numbers and make sure that they are in the correct order in the shelf. Please note, though, that this is only really useful if you're doing quite a small area at a time. There's nothing more frustrating if you are then forced to try and find the out of place item, which it highlighted, that could be 4 bays back. So a little on this point from experience, it's always worth doing a pre-tidy before you do the inventory. It saves you so much time in finding and replacing items that are misshelved, especially as some will consequently then be found later on in the stock check. There are lots of other items further down the screen to limit your stock check. And this can be by locations, it can be by site, it can be by collection, it can be by a specific call number range, item types, and more. And when we click submit at the bottom, this will update all the items last seen via your list of barcodes, which you've brought in by whatever method, to that chosen date. Once you have updated the last seen date for all the items, it's possible to identify items that were not seen and not scanned, and therefore can be assumed as missing. And then you can use the batch item modification tool later on to change the status of these items to lost or whatever status you prefer. Alternatively, you can automatically compare a previously saved list of scan barcodes with the generated list by uploading your barcode file, and that's an option here at the top. The same selections apply as before. You choose your filters, the library, the shelving location, etc., to generate the list to compare the barcodes and click on submit. Now, depending on the number of barcodes you are comparing, this can take a few minutes. And it's definitely not recommended to compare lists of more than 1,000 barcodes, as this can cause the session to time out. Of course, you may want to also limit the comparison list for other reasons, such as the availability of staff time and the practicalities of tracking down the out-of-place items that it finds. So once Koha has finished comparing the barcodes file to the generated list, what it does is it returns you a list of items that are problematic. And the types of problems that it highlights are that the item was not scanned, so that's officially a missing item. That it's found in the wrong place. Now, the item is on your barcodes list, but it's not on the generated list from the barcodes that you've scanned. So perhaps your list was limited to a bay and the misplaced item was found there. That the item is still checked out. And this would apply if you've clicked that button previously that says that you don't want it to automatically check it in. That there's no barcode. So this barcode that it saw doesn't exist in your Koha. It could be a previously deleted item, it could be one with an incomplete cataloging, or it could be one that doesn't belong in your collection. Perhaps it's from another local library. There's also unknown or not for loan status, and Koha is guessing that it's a not for loan status because this item has a missing loan type or category. So you'd have to go into that item and check its bibliorecord. And finally, that the item is shelved out of order. And this is when we've ticked that little box that we want to show if they're out of order. It's still in the selected section for inventory, which is unlike found in the wrong place entirely with the one above. So this one was expected on that shelf, but it's not in the right order. Because it's only highlighting problematic items, it is again best recommended to do a few shelves or a bay at a time. Unless, of course, you have one of those delightful RFID ones and you can just wave it and like magic find your items. And with all reports, you have the option to export your list to CSV. So if you are physically doing a very small inventory check, you could print it out and do the more manual version. So let's go back to my slides. So we also have to mention a delightful new interactive inventory plugin, which was created by Jacob, one of our developers here at OpenFifth. This is expected to be signed off in time for the 2505 upgrade of Koha. It adds a lot more of the associated processes to inventory. So if you're using a list and scanned items, you can immediately update those missing items that it finds back to available or found, and in reverse, the ones that aren't there that are expected to be there can be marked as missing automatically, rather than the later batch process, which is currently required with the out-of-the-box Koha. It also simplifies a lot of the choices made available to the most logical and useful ones. So as previously mentioned, some of the tick boxes perhaps would very, very rarely be used. So it makes more logical sense of those. Another plugin which is useful is called the Shelf Reading plugin. This allows you, when you've tidied a shelf, to scan it in and fix it into Koha as the expected collection. And this makes finding items and inventory checks much more straightforward, especially if you have one of those handy RFID ones. And if you're ever looking for useful Koha plugins, there is a wiki page, which I have included as a link here. So there are a large number of reports that can help you run batch processes to delete or edit item records. For this, you'd need permission to create or run reports or Super Librarian. The items with no checkouts is an obvious one and a useful preset report, but I cannot recommend ChatGPT Koha Report Assistant highly enough to help you with your weeding. You can use this to narrow your search to items not borrowed over a period with the age of the item included. And this example that is on the screen is one I created, which shows me items that were published over 10 years ago that have not been borrowed in the past 2 years, that displays title, author, and barcode and shelf number, and orders it by shelf number for me. And then it's a simple process to copy and paste that into your Koha reports. If you are interested in using it yourself, I've added the QR code to find it. And we have a blog article and a short video available on our website and YouTube that tells you more about this. But one of the batch processes that was not included in Fiona's excellent webinar was the item modification by age automation. There are no specific preferences or settings to turn it on, but if you need to use it, you will need to set up a cron job to run for it. And we suggest that this would happen each night. And if you are one of our customers, just let us know and we can set that up for you. What this does is it looks at various age criteria of the items and allows you to make automated changes given that prescribed triggers happen. So I'm going to again come out of here, and we're going to have a look at cataloging. And then you can see that in automation, there's this item modifications by age. So what we do is we make a new rule. So let me just give you an example. We're going to edit the rules. So this is one that we've created earlier. What it does is it asks you at what stage in the life cycle of this item is going to make the change. And then the age field gives you quite a few options for the age of the item. And these selections are, it defaults to accessioned date, but you can swap it to when it was acquired, so the acquisition date. You can swap it to the date the replacement price was entered, the date it was last borrowed, the date it was last seen, and the date a status was set. And that could be something like damaged or withdrawn. And then we have to set conditions. And this is what criteria is needed to trigger this update. And finally, substitutions. So this is what changes are made when the script runs. And you can have as many of these as you like. And once you're done, you would save these and go back to the main page. So on my list, I'm just going to go back to this. You can see here, this one is for new items. So this is like a scenario where we have a new item type, and the new items can only be circulated for 2 weeks instead of our usual 4 weeks. So this process will, after the number of days, 180 days, will mark something that was new back to normal book stock. If I edit it, I could change more conditions and substitutions, or I can add new rules and make new sets of instructions for stock based on one of these age criteria. It then runs automatically as your cron job at your allocated time and converts all the stock accordingly. The thing to note with this process is that it does not alert staff to change. It just presents itself on the item coming to the counter. So if you wanted an automated process to change the location of the items, you probably would be better served by a stock rotation, which is what we're going to look at next. So rotations. They are also found from the main cataloguing page. You can, of course, so you've always got the option of transferring items without the need for any holds or requests by users and without a rotation. There's no special permissions for that. It's just part of circulation. There is, however, one useful setting in checkout policy to alert you if those transfers have not arrived in the expected time period, which I was showing on this screen. And these simple transfers are really worth mentioning because rotation is a more formalized way to share stock, but transfers cover much more impromptu movement of stock and, of course, include your user requests via holds and staff making decisions to move around stock in a much more impromptu way. If you have a large amount to transfer, you would, of course, move to a bulk transfer process, which was very ably described in Fiona's previously mentioned webinar. To use stock rotation, you do need to be a super librarian or have the manage stock rotation ticked on the list of privileges as shown here. We also need to go into administration and enable the stock rotation. And also shown here are the permissions to ensure that if you want to transfer or rotate packs or collections together, that you enable groups in items and that we enable holds on these groups. There are some settings to choose here too. The first one allows automatic marking as lost when the bundle items are checked in and any are absent, and the other one selects the items within the bundle can or cannot be loaned separately. So what stock rotation does is it helps us spread resources more fairly amongst library branches if you are a bigger group, and it allows your patrons to see a wider range of titles. Items are often popular when they are new at one branch, but that fades over time. And this tool empowers staff to automate the movement of items onto another branch before that usage declines and therefore extend the item's useful life. This, of course, is a great add-on to my use of modification by age, which helps to so that they automatically would then be loaned for less time as they move around the rotation. Rotation can also be useful to single site libraries and archives as a way to automatically move collections and stock from shelf to storage or to preservation and so on according to a schedule or rota. So library staff create rotation plans and then assign them items to them. So there's also the cron job that needs to be happening for stock rotation, and this moves them nightly, usually from one stage to the next, if they are available for processing. So again, a nightly cron job that if you are a customer, please ask us about and we will set that up for you. So each library then receives a report on items of interest for them for today's rota checks, and each item it will show which items should, according to Koha, be located on the shelves of the current branch and which should be picked up and checked in to move to the next. There is a notice slip that is also available to be edited and customized, so you can say what it will tell your staff, and this is found in tools and notices and slips, and it's called stock rotation slip. So let's quickly move out of here and back to our Koha. I'm going to go back to the main cataloging page, and you can see stock rotation is here at the bottom in the automations. So setting one up is pretty straightforward. If I click new rota, you have to give it a name. You have to decide whether it's cyclical. And if you click no, the item remains at the last library on the rota upon reaching the end of the process. If you click yes, the items will continue to rotate. So they come back to the first library, and then once they've completed their time indefinitely until they are manually removed from the rota. And then description is an optional, just telling people what that rota does. So then once we've saved that, let me go back to one that we've already done. You can manage and set stages for your rotations. So let's pick this one first. We're going to go to manage the stages. So this one for adult thrillers will go to the main library, starts at the main library, goes to Green Library, the Hunt Library, and finally the Anthropology Library. So once we've got the stages, we can basically go back and we can add items. So we're going to manage our items, and this is a list that you wish of items or bundles that you wish to be rotated. The overnight cron job then processes them, and so it's worth remembering that this will happen from the next day. So interestingly, with this method, a barcode file can be used to input all the items. So you don't, in the add items, you don't have to just do them singly. And there's also a nice integration with EDI. So if you have EDI working, you can set an option so that items that are purchased can immediately enter one of these rotations. So once the rota is complete with its stages and items, we activate it and it cycles those items through. There is another method which has a very similar name, and I'm going to show you where that is now. If we go to homepage, it's actually in tools, and it's called rotating collections. I'm just going to explain what the difference is. So this is a much simpler and more manual process option. It has no cron job attached and it has no notices. So here we input items by barcode manually, and it ensures the transfers are all done as part of the process. And each stage has to be set up and activated. But still, this might be a better choice for smaller collections when you have less to circulate. So we're going to go back to the slides. Okay, so there's several methods available to you to look after your stock, which are linked to the acquisitions process. We can set up and use purchase suggestions. We can use the holds count to purchase the well-used items, and we can use reports on old stock or withdrawn to refresh too. So let's start with purchase suggestions. The permissions shown on the slide are so you can amend, accept, and create suggestions. But just to use them in acquisitions, you need to have permissions to create orders. So let's pop back to Koha. So we're here on the acquisitions page. So once a suggestion has been approved, it can be added to an order. And suggestions can come direct from users via the OPAC or portal when they're logged in, or you can link up a form to feed into Koha suggestions. But the thing to remember is that suggestions all have to be reviewed and approved by a member of the library team with the correct permissions before they can actually be pulled into acquisitions. So let's just click on our suggestions here on the left. So here you can see the various suggestions that we have received on our demo site and their status. The first tab at the top is suggestions that are awaiting. And if I have permissions, I can accept these either singly or in bulk by using the ticks on the side. The second tab is the ones that have already been accepted. And we also have tabs for those already ordered or rejected. And in every case, when changing the status, we can include a reason for why that was done. And you can select whether these are viewable by your users or not. There are preset ones for why it was accepted or not, but there is also one called Other, which allows you to type your own reasons in there. So it's if we pop back to acquisitions now, and we have to select a vendor. So I'm going to pick Amazon, and I'm going to change this by date so that my latest one is there. And I've created one called recommended. But if I want to add to this basket now, so also you could obviously do this from scratch by creating a new basket. But if I want to add to basket, it gives me options to actually select from a suggestion. Now, worth noting that only those approved ones would appear for us here, and we can click on one or more or multiples of those suggestions, and it pops it into basket. And then we'll obviously ask you for information about the item, what item locations and so on at that stage. So there's a very similar process for the holds ratios. So I can pick here from the titles with the highest hold ratios. If I click on this. So this basically tells you can set how many holds would, warrant them being picked. We have a very low number here because we do very little issues in our system, but I can presume that in your library you would be wanting a hold ratio a lot higher than this. But basically it shows you which ones were the ones with the highest number of reservations on, and you can add those direct to your basket. So a great report to use on deciding on purchases, of course, is the items with no checkouts report, which is a pre-saved report for all our Koha customers. And to mention, it's not our product at all, but there is a great integration if you subscribe to it called Collection HQ. This is a stock management tool that works brilliantly with Koha to highlight areas and topics to refresh or build upon and add to purchase lists. It offers measurable KPIs against your stock quality and coverage. and works to link its reports directly to Koha stock. So unlike merely searching in Koha for the status or use of an item, the numbers of holds, or its age, you can search by topic. And this is really useful for coverage for a celebration, for an event, or if you are decolonizing your stock, for example. It's an established integration. It's used by many of our public library customers. And there's also an academic specific version that's gaining popularity in the UK called CHQ Academic. So as mentioned previously, if you use EDI in your acquisitions, you can also turn on the stock rotation aspect, meaning that all your items enter the rota. Well, the specific items enter the rota as soon as they're received. So the last one to cover is the preservation module. This was added in 2311. And in order to see and use the preservation module, you have to first enable it in the systems admin with the settings shown on the screen. Otherwise, preservation module does not even appear on your home screen. So it's not just of use to libraries that bind and preserve items, which was its original intention. It really does add a useful workflow to any complex physical stock movement or management. For example, you might be a legal library that has a huge backlog of new loose leaf inserts to add to update binders, and you want those to be not available while that is happening. Or you could have a local history collection that is curating a new exhibition, or a museum that has a periodical removal of materials for preservation and cleaning. And for every single step of this preservation workflow, data can be attached to the items. And for each workflow, items go to a waiting list before being added to a train. A train in this context is a process of staged work and actions that are each dependent on the previous step to continue. A useful feature is that slips can be printed for each stage of the process to place in that physical item, which provides you a visual clue for its status. And when set up, each stage can be completed by beeping the barcode or just typing it in, which will then move it to the next train or eventually mark them back to available when the process has run its course. It's an excellent addition for any library, museum, or archive that has physical stock which needs regular management. So thank you for joining me for this webinar. I do hope you found it useful. There are regular webinars on both essential and more open source topics, as well as specific how-to webinars like today. You can visit our website for the booking links. And even if you can't attend on the day, we will always send you a recording. So past webinars and shorter What's on Our Mind videos are available on our YouTube too. And I hope you can join us again soon.